It's nefarious, man. Like, the brain works in fucked up ways.
The mind is one of the most deceiving, manipulative pieces of equipment, flesh, human bodies on earth. I never have trusted my brain.
All of that weight lives in your head, and you are the decision maker.
Psychology of Entrepreneurship. Hey, it's Runsley. I'm working on this volume even before volume 11 is out. That is the first time we are kind of getting ahead. Well, just a little bit. But how are you? What's been happening? I'm not sure if you are aware, but this is actually my 4th podcast. There is Bon Appetit, Should I Start a Podcast? And Podcast Revolution, amongst some of the others that I've started. But apart from being a podcast enthusiast, I'm an entrepreneur. And my team and I also host and have been hosting the first podcasting conference in Australia for the last 5 years. And in 2020, we are back for the next installment. So April 30th, 2020 is the date. It is for businesses and brands that have or are looking to add voice to their business using a podcast. This year is going to be all tactical. Anyway, I thought I'd mention it, but I also wanted to mention that while I have the dates and some of the speakers confirmed, I don't have a venue yet. And I wanted to remind myself more than you that that was okay. But I digress. While I was in Toronto, I got to sit and chat with these two amazing people.
Jordan Exani, one of the owners, partner, co-founder of Shift Collab. And what we do, so we are a team of, even though this is small here, we have a team of 60 mental health professionals all over Ontario and Canada. And we deliver some pretty extraordinary mental health programming, therapy and services to some of the top companies in North America.
And
I'm Megan Rafees, and I am a clinical social worker. I have a master's in social work, and I am a registered social worker as well. I am the co-founder of Shift Collab, which is a mental health speaking, education, and therapy company. I also own a clinic called Shift. The two businesses sound very similar. Wow. And we have a team of over 50 mental health counselors and therapists, and we support ambitious professionals who are seeking to get more from their lives through digging deep on their mental health.
And while I had the best time with them both and can't wait to hang out with them again, I feel context is important because some of the questions coming through are, well, Ronsley, how do you pick your guests for the psychology of entrepreneurship? Well, to be honest, I meet people all the time. And sometimes I have the feeling in my gut that their story is one that someone wants to hear. Also, other guests recommend new ones, and sometimes listeners will recommend a guest. But, do you remember this guy?
Honestly, it was the first time I did MMT on the final evening. I had a couple standing ovations throughout the event, but I was amongst like heroes of mine on some level. Like Tim Ferriss was there, Mark Eckel was there, just like a lot of like TED speakers and that kind of stuff. And it was just, I mean, to know where I was 5 months ago, to where I was then, it was just a really beautiful moment.
That was Jason Gaynard in Volume 9. I met Jordan and Megan at MMT Park City. So I suppose what I wanted to know was, what was Jordan's story? How did he get to know Jason?
Jason had been on my radar for a long time. And I had reached out when Megan and I were starting our podcast as a, hey, you know, I'm like familiar with your journey and I'd just love to pick your brain sometime. Could like that token, you know, and he responded. And we ended up having coffee in Waterloo, right near where he's from. And we, at the end of it, it was clear that, he saw something in what Megan and I were doing. So that relationship began. And then one of the next times that I saw him, I was out for dinner with him and Neil Pasricha, who's like a multiple New York Times bestselling author. And because Neil's an old friend of mine. And I introduced him and Jason, and I was sitting there too. And these guys are going back and forth, talking about like their favorite moment with like Gretchen Rubin, like, just like stuff that's larger than life. And I'm sitting there just sort of sinking into the seat. And And we end up just having a great night. Like Jason, the three of us walk around until like 2 a.m. And then Jason goes back to his hotel. Neil and I are just sort of walking because we live in a similar direction. And Neil's like, dude, you should really like write Jason tomorrow and be like, dude, that was awesome. I've got a lot to, I think what I kind of ended up saying was like, this is an interesting moment where I may not have the clout or the stature or the significance of other people that will be at MMT, but I really feel like I can provide value because my sort of magic, my own, like when I'm at my highest and best use is I'm helping people rethink their story and tell it in a creative way. And that's what I bring to the mental health space, helping leaders do that, helping managers do that, helping employees do that. And I just basically write this email that says, I'm at a crossroads. I feel like I can provide and really support a lot of value. And I think it'd be an absolute honor for you to consider me. Jason emails back with a video like next day and was like, Jordan, I was thinking the same thing, man. Absolutely would love to have you. Would you come to Carmel? And I'm freaking out, like figuring out where I'm going to scrounge up the cash, right? But hey, you got to do it. So I go, and it was the exact same experience. Mike, UJ, and I went and shared a room, which was nice because then the three of us could sort of, like be together on it. Yeah. But I remember there were so many moments where I just like felt like I was invisible there. And during those dinners, especially early on, like I sat with Zach from Book in the Box, who wasn't there, but Tucker's business partner the first night. And he and I really hit it off and we're good buds now. But then like Cameron Harold sits down and I'm sitting next to UJ, who just before, and this was before Megan and I were together, but just before MMT, I was trying to set him up with Megan because I knew that they were totally incompatible because UJ's so like, I drink like 2.36 cups of coffee a day and like blah, blah, blah. And Megan's like, you'll meet her. She's very different. So all of a sudden it was just like this moment of being like, holy shit, like, this Zach guy's cool. This Cameron guy's like larger than life. I know exactly who this dude is. And sitting next to UJ, who I was trying to set up with a friend of mine. And that just made it, I just sort of had this moment of pause and just being like, right, we're all kind of the same.
So by this time in the interview, Megan hadn't joined us by then. And while Jordan was trying to set Megan up with UJ, who is, funnily enough, an upcoming volume on the show, Jordan and Megan are business and life partners. This is important because one of the topics not spoken about or spoken about less is what is it like being life partners with an entrepreneur? I know Rochelle might have a lot to say about that. And what is it like when both people are entrepreneurial and creative? Well, more about that coming up. But Megan has a lot of experience in mental health space. She's a clinical therapist and really widely reputed in the company that she's built called Shift, which she leads. So, imposter syndrome, Megan, thoughts?
So when we think about imposter syndrome, which I have to say because it's becoming really cool right now, it's not actually a syndrome. It's not a clinical diagnosis. It's all over the internet. Technically, it's called imposter phenomenon. And it's a series of symptoms that are quite consistent with anxiety, however, to a lesser extent. So like, if we think about anxiety as coming with what we call cognitive distortions, they're called unhelpful thinking styles. Things like mind reading, imagining I know what other people are thinking. All or nothing thinking, either I'm perfect or I'm a failure. Personalization, taking things personally. Emotional reasoning. So choosing to believe what I'm feeling versus the reality of the situation. So it's a collection of thoughts that actually impact how we feel and behave and what we tell ourselves it means about us. And these thoughts mimic symptoms of anxiety. And so if I am feeling like really anxious because I just started a new job, I'm sitting at my desk, I'm eyeing my boss to the left of me, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, they're going to figure out I don't know what I'm doing because I didn't answer that email properly and there was a typo. Or if I'm delivering a keynote and I'm thinking, shit, do I even know this topic? Like all these people are relying on me to know the information. What happens is technically I'm mind reading. So technically I'm imagining what people are thinking about me. or I'm thinking very all or nothing. Either I'm perfect at delivering this keynote or I'm a failure. And so these kind of cognitive distortions are what typically leads to feeling like an imposter. We pair them with our core beliefs, which are those beliefs that are written on the lenses by which we see our world, which are built up through our life over time. So if in grade 2, I come home and I write a spelling test at school, I come home and I get a 90 and my parents say, well, why didn't you get 100? That's not good enough. Then I think, oh, not good enough. Then grade 4, I fail a test. Then grade 12, I get dumped and my partner says, well, you're not good enough. You're not even good at conversation. I build up these beliefs in myself over time. So imposter syndrome is really just an elevation of these beliefs, our core beliefs, combined with our unhelpful thinking styles that show up. And typically we tend to have 2 or 3 that tend to be our favorite. None of us are immune to them. And then our behavior changes as a result. So if I'm feeling like an imposter, I'm going to walk really slowly to this interview so that I get here at the end so I don't have to say that much. And so rather than it being a syndrome, it's essentially a difficult and challenging collection of unhelpful thoughts that drive our mood and our behavior.
So inferiority or imposter syndrome is like part of human nature. Like we all have it. Like absolutely 100%. We have moments where we're like, wow, I'm probably not measuring up here.
Psychologist Dr. Jason Eckerman believes that talking to someone who embodies your idea of success can help you to overcome imposter syndrome. He states that speaking to mentors that are more experienced than you, or someone that you believe to be in a deserved position, can help to put things into perspective.
I keep remembering this phrase.
For the most part, it's going to be about you. That's why you're doing it, right? Now, I'm not saying some people aren't driven by their mission. Some people are, but it's easy to conflate those two. And a lot of people convince themselves it's about mission when really it's about, I'm going to show daddy or whatever.
Because I keep asking myself, why do I do what I do? And why do I go after certain things or certain goals? I kind of was questioning what made me not feel any of my previous achievements. I mean, if you've listened to any of the previous volumes, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And just like me, Jordan had a story.
And I know that I certainly always felt this urge to try to punch above my weight, so to speak, to try to like prove myself, right? I'm going to show them. I'm going to show those kids that gave me a hard time. And so I got like hyper involved. Like I was student council president in grade 8 and in grade 12. I started to become a decent enough musician. And by the time I finished high school, I was in a band with my brother, actually, because we kind of bonded over that. That was touring all over Ontario. Like we were playing 3 shows a week. And our singer, even though we're not religious, our singer was Christian. So we fell in the Christian rock sort of area. And like, oh, man, we were making more money like playing shows at that point than I have as a musician since. It was crazy. And then I was also a competitive mountain biker. So I was racing all over Canada on a mountain bike team. And all these things were things that, you know, kids from my shitty little farm community did not do, right? And if I'm being really honest, I didn't do any of those things because I particularly wanted to. I did them because I believed I had something to prove. And I would say around that point, that's, I think, when I started to become aware that I really didn't, I probably had a lot of self-hatred that was motivating me. Because when you grow up in that environment of just believing that you're not enough, that you're not welcome, that you're not safe, I mean, it really sticks with you. So, you know, then it sort of came to a head after high school, I think, where I had this very elaborate idea to ride my bike from Vancouver to Charlottetown, so across Canada, 6,000 kilometers and change, 6,200 kilometers, with my best friend, Cody, who also had kind of a similar experience to me. And we decided that we were going to try to get a big charity on board because we would be some of the youngest people that we could find that had ever done that, potentially the youngest people at 16 and 17. And we ended up hooking up with the Stephen Lewis Foundation, which is, Stephen Lewis used to be Canada's envoy to the UN. Then he was a big player within the UN around HIV and AIDS. And now he runs this amazing charity called the Stephen Lewis Foundation that works in sub-Saharan Africa. And I reached out to them point blank. I had no connection to the cause. But I just said, hey, I have no connection to the cause, and maybe that's the point. I just want to be some random guy that does something good. The reality, though, is that I was doing it to try to win back a girlfriend.
It's always
My grade 11 girlfriend, who was like obsessed with AIDS, HIV prevention in Africa, and like a real like sort of global thinker at a young age. I was like trying to impress her and like get her back. And I think more importantly, I was trying to say to my small town, like, fuck you guys. I'm more than you. I'm more than this. So I skipped my prom, and for the next 2 months, we pedaled every day. And we ended up, and this is the really mindfuck part, like we ended up raising almost $500,000. It got like front page news coverage everywhere we went. And the narrative was that like these kids are like so altruistic and generous and giving, when really we were just wounded souls trying to get even. Right. And so I would say around that experience, it started to give me a basic awareness of my mental health. And more importantly, I think in like related to a lot of the entrepreneurship stuff about how sometimes we seek validation in ways that seems really noble and novel on the outside, but inside it's really a cry for help.
When we come back, what happens when we wake up in the morning and wear the I'm not good enough glasses?
Psychology of entrepreneurship.
The main objective of this audio project is to bring together entrepreneurs and creatives who share similar values in a place where conversation can be had without judgment. A place where our listeners can give us constructive feedback to improve this show with topic and guest recommendations. For access to full-length interviews and access to that place, go to mustamplify.com/POE and click the button.
Before the break, mind reading and imposter phenomenon. We've heard how the world is basically a reflection of our perspective. But do you remember confirmation bias?
Confirmation bias is we humans, all of us, not the left, not the right, not the females or the male, everybody, we tend to look for information that confirms what we already believe. This is proven with science.
So what happens when we wake up, wear the I'm not good enough glasses, and work unconsciously to confirm our bias?
I felt inadequate for much of my life, right? And I think that voice I think it's saying two things. I think one, it's probably saying, what your experience, I think it's saying you're not enough. You won't be enough. And then on the flip side, it's also sort of whispering like, so try harder. So like go deeper. So be more hardcore. And I think you see me do this dance a lot of the self-deprecation and struggling with that of worth. But also on the flip side, like it's almost like the only way I know how to get out of that is to go harder. And I think that's obviously unsustainable. What would you call that?
What I see from you and what I hear from you is often, I'm not good enough. I don't belong. And by belonging, it means I'm not successful enough. I'm not working hard enough. And then I find that we call it a core belief. So it's a belief that you hold about yourself that impacts the way in which you see your world. And so your core belief, often I think, and most of us carry a few, often is, I'm not good enough. And the analogy I give for that is, imagine every day you wake up and you're laying in your bed and you're like reaching over to your nightstand because you can't really see, and you put your glasses on. So here I am putting on my glasses. I just got brand new, beautiful, thick frame glasses. But what's written on my lenses and what no one else can see is a message. And say that day I happen to reach over and pick up my I'm not good enough glasses. All of a sudden, the only lens I'm looking at for the whole day says I'm not good enough. Yeah. And I think you often wake up and put those glasses on. And how I know you're wearing them is when I start.
This is becoming unfair very quickly.
This is a great agreement. This was your idea. Yeah, this is his idea. So how I notice that you're wearing your I'm not good enough glasses is when I start to talk about challenges or I start to talk about a business problem I want to tackle. You say, ah, and you start to spiral. And then you say, well, I'm going to work on business development, or I'm going to go talk to this person, or I have a meeting next week, or we need to grow bigger. And what I often wish you could do is take the glasses off and feel enough and be present with me to talk about the issue at hand. Because oftentimes that issue isn't solved by you suddenly finding this business deal that's going to make you feel adequate finally.
Yeah, that's chasing.
Yeah, you're chasing. You're just chasing that silver bullet. Yeah. And I wish in the moment I could be like, oh, hey, you're wearing those glasses. Could you take them off? Yeah. But as your business partner and life partner, it's a tricky tightrope to walk, essentially, to be able to say, hey, in this moment, I notice your core belief showing up. And you are good enough, and this business issue isn't tied to your worth.
Yeah, that's not what I want to hear in those moments.
I know that since hearing about these glasses, I am more aware on the days I'm wearing them. Awareness is amazing when you have it, but what happens when you don't have the awareness? How do you ask for help?
Even if we pick up on it, I think there's a part of all of us that says, well, what the fuck do I know to solve this, right? But in reality, it's not your role as the peer of that person that made the hint to fix it. It's your role to be a human being and ask the question. People intuitively know what they need. At the end of that conversation, ask them, what do you think you need? Oh, I don't want to feel this way. Well, maybe we should try to find you some support together. That's all you have to do. You don't have to be that. It's not a life or death situation from that conversation, right? And now oftentimes I think we can just feel so paralyzed. One of the biggest things I think that we encourage people to do within our business and like the workshops we teach and whatnot is like just to give people a little bit of confidence that they can ask meaningful questions of each other that does support each other's wellness. And that's not as binary as I'm alone or I'm speaking to a therapist. Like there's a lot in between the two.
Mm-hmm. And putting out an invitation to a friend to say, I've been struggling lately and I just want you to know that's okay to do. And oftentimes when you do that, your friends start to be like, oh my gosh, I'm struggling too.
Yes,
or,
exactly.
Oh, I've had thoughts of suicide too. When I share with not all clients, but some clients, I will share that when I first built the business, things were growing. It was just me managing. I was trying to run a team of clinicians. I was running this clinic. I had spent all my money. And I was so afraid of becoming a failure that I was back at the office supply store looking for receipt paper because I bought the wrong one 3 times that day and had to keep returning it. And next to the receipt paper is the will, make your own will section. And I stood in front of it. It was 9 o'clock at night. I was coming off working like 7 days a week, trying to build this clinic and get this mental health practice going. I was seeing clients. I looked at this will section and I thought, I can make a will and end it. Then then I didn't fail the business. Then I won't fail all my colleagues. Then I won't fail my clients. And in that moment, I had a choice. And I said, okay, Megan, you were trained in this, but that doesn't matter. I'm human. And I said, what do I need to do? And I said, I need connection. And so I left the will section. I left the receipt paper. And I went out to the car. And at the time, Jordan and I were friends. And I called him and I just said, I'm not okay. I'm not okay because I caught myself looking at wills and I was thinking about how I could end it. And here I am, like I'm failing even more because I'm supposed to be the one who's supporting people dealing with suicidal thoughts. And now I'm having them too. So I'm a shit therapist. I'm a shit human. I'm failing at everything. And he said, slow down. Like, slow down. You're a therapist, but you're human too. And I was just like in this shame spiral. And I thought that was the only way out to not be a failure. And I'm so glad that I didn't act on it. And I haven't had thoughts to act on it. But the idea of when it comes up can be so scary that oftentimes people are afraid to tell people. But when you do, usually you find power and support in that versus like being left alone in it.
According to a study by Michael Freeman, founders are 2 times more likely to suffer from depression, 6 times more likely to suffer from ADHD, 3 times more likely to suffer from substance abuse, 10 times more likely to suffer from bipolar disorder, 2 times more likely to have psychiatric hospitalization, and 2 times more likely to have suicidal thoughts.
The statistics tell us we are far more likely to be experiencing it than the average population, but something that I think we often see when we look around a room is, who do I see that's fighting to be seen? Who do I see that's fighting to be heard? And what I hear from your story is you said, I'm not wearing my I'm not worthy glasses anymore. I'm worthy of being seen and I'm worthy of being heard. And I think when we look at what people are doing, what the people close to us are doing, I wonder what it would be like if we actually took a few seconds just to say, I see you. Because what would you actually see behind all the producing and the growing and the scaling and the funneling? What do we need to be seen for? And I hear in that moment, you felt seen and heard. And that was really huge. And I hear oftentimes it's something we're seen as tied to our work, but we're not always seen as tied to our worth. And being seen as tied to our worth means, what do I value that helps me to feel really good about myself, that helps me to feel joy in this world? And how do I let others see that in me so that they can praise that instead of what I'm putting out right now, which is usually a little bit of a mask? Something Tracy Forrester of Ignition said to me,
she's gonna bring her up,
is last time we spoke, she said, Megan, I feel like every time I see you, I just get a sip of water. But what I'm really craving is the whole gulp. And I see you and I want more. I want the whole gulp. And in that moment, I was like, oh, I'm seen. And it wasn't the validation of, oh, you're a great therapist or any of that. I just wanted to be seen for being me. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, we become very entwined, our sense of worth, with our success in the business. I think it allows us to wear a protective mask. I don't have to talk about my feelings or how I'm really doing or my relationships. If I say I'm busy, I'm fine, I'm successful, I made 7 million last year, that hides what's really underneath. We know that entrepreneurs are having a higher rate of suicide, and we need to start saying why. We need to start saying, I see you, and seeing you is that you are enough as you are to me. Tell me what's really going on. Because your success is not your net worth or your sales. Your success is being here on this earth and our connection and what we share. And I think that needs to be the new driver of success in the entrepreneur world, or else we're just comparing and despairing and never being real with each other.
Definitions of success. I keep thinking of when Coach John Wooden talks about coining our own definitions of success.
I coined my own definition of success in 1934 when I was teaching at a high school in South Bend, Indiana, being a little bit disappointed and delusioned perhaps by the way parents of the youngsters in my English classes expected their youngsters to get an A or B. They thought a C was all right for the neighbor's children because the neighbor's children are all average. But they weren't satisfied with their own and would make the teacher feel that they had failed or the youngster had failed, and that's not right. The good Lord in His infinite wisdom didn't create us all equal as far as intelligence is concerned, any more than we're equal as far as size, appearance. Not everybody could earn an A or B, and I didn't like that way of judging.
And while I ask you to think about what success means to you, I want to take you back to the start of this volume when we were talking about Jason Gaynard and MMT, or Mastermind Talks. At MMT Park City, on the last day, we went through an exercise called Walk the Line. It was part of the event and everyone took part. This is Jordan remembering what that was like.
there's a lot of that feeling here. There's a lot of that emotion here. And I feel like one of the things that people do at MMT, and I think in the entrepreneurial community more generally, is they tend to pull back a little bit and sort of isolate themselves if they feel that insecurity. And what's interesting is it's not just people in the first year, it's people in all the years, right? You see some of the people that have been there every year still kind of like hang out with like their little crew and not engage. And what I learned during MMT is it's not because they don't want to engage, it's because they still have that same voice in their heads. And like that has been one of the most mind-boggling experiences of all of this. And like the other people I know there, it's one of those things like, the closer you get to these people that, you sort of put on a pedestal, you see like they're like all of us. I know Jason has some saying about that, but like, we all have that dialogue. We all have that voice. And MMT is kind of this cool opportunity to like sort of speak truth to that. Yeah. And like the walk the line exercise this year, I thought was an amazing way to do it. To look over and see like Todd Herman bawling his eyes out, and then over on the other side. And like, I was matched with John, and it was just like, man, like it was just fucking crazy. So anyway, suffice to say, I just want you to know that I feel like everyone has those moments, and it's so cool to see that you've taken that experience and now you're here sitting down with all these people because this to me, what you've done of like showing up and creating the time for a conversation, that's where the real value is.
I am very grateful to have started the Psychology of Entrepreneurship, for the people I'm meeting, for the conversations I'm having, for the impact these conversations are having, even when I don't know what that impact is most of the time. I am grateful that I've made the time and the effort to have these conversations, because I almost didn't start this because I'm no psychologist. Why would I want to be known to be the expert in psychology? Well, every accountant isn't meant to start an accounting podcast. Some accountants care about bringing freedom to their clients and should talk about why freedom is more valuable than money in the bank. But the ROI for me, well, the ROI of the Psychology of Entrepreneurship is massive for me.
The cool thing about this is also that while you experience it and saying, well, I almost didn't even start this, we have it by coming to meet with you, by being like, do we even know what to say? But then there's this cool thing that happens in between us that is very much a connection that's growing that doesn't allow us to wear our masks.
Yeah.
So in doing this, not only is it you interviewing people, but it's you taking your mask off so that we feel comfortable to do the same. And through that, I imagine that we all learn more about ourselves, but like you give us the gift to do this. And I hope in return, you get to carry the journey of, we see you when you're right in front of us. We see you sharing your story and we hear you. And I think that's such a cool journey of you're giving us the gift. And I hope that you get that in return.
And also, what does it matter if anything comes out of this or not? Who says this audio has to be published in a documentary style format? Like, why is that so, like, because if you wrote us an email like in a month and said, bad news, the recorder didn't have a card in it. Sorry, we wouldn't be sitting here being like, oh man, like he sucks. Like we would be like, that was a wonderful conversation and an opportunity for connection. And I bet that's how everyone felt too.
Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
Coming up on the Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
When I became CEO of this publicly traded company, which was not making money, and I got it to cash flow break even 18 months ahead of schedule. Therefore I've always found that my own dreams and visions kind of come together because I help so many other people. I'm just kind of always on. I'm always looking for the next. I might be reading on vacation, see an article that could mean something to one of my charities, and I'll push that through. I didn't use the term quick and cheap. I used speed and value. I was there when they fired the Saatchi brothers. Charles and Maurice, like you're talking like their name was on the building.
Psychology of
I interviewed Jordan and Megan because they bring such a unique perspective to entrepreneurship and psychology with their relationship and their businesses. Megan is the co-host along with Jordan of Impostercast, an iTunes Top 20 podcast. Megan completed advanced training in cognitive behavioral therapy from the joint program of the Faculty of Medicine, University of Toronto, and the Center for Addiction and Mental Health. She has also completed a narrative therapy certificate program from Hinks, Delcrest, and obtained a certificate in the Living Works Assist Suicide Prevention program. Jordan is the co-founder of Shift Collab, one of Canada's largest therapy and mental health education firms, along with Megan. He runs a breakthrough mental health program called What's Your Big Lie? He is an international speaker and has worked with Fortune 1000 companies, top universities, startups, and national governments to help them develop strategies and programs that use authenticity to increase retention, performance, and self-worth. They are both amazing humans, deep connectors, and friends.
Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
This is a Must Amplify production. Special thanks to every guest expert that has appeared on the show. Editing and sound design by Kelly Bonnyman and Joel Thomas. Voiceover by Sonia Stone. Fact voiceover by Kelly Bonnyman. Guest research and content by Claire Gould. Project managed by Shannon Morrison. Produced and hosted by me, Ronsley Vaz. For more episodes and where to listen, go to mustamplify.com/POE.
Hey, it's Kaylee from Must Amplify. I'm the sound engineer for this volume of Psychology of Entrepreneurship. I'm a part of the team that made this production come alive. Our team consists of members from all around the globe, with our headquarters based in West End, Brisbane, Australia, the land of the drop bear. For more about the cool stuff that we're up to and to work out of our studios, head to mustamplify.com. Are you still listening? Here's our little gift to you for sticking around.
She has also completed the narrative therapy certificate.